Set 6 of Disney Lorcana Azurite Sea will release very soon, and many players are wondering what are they going to play on that first league night. Well, here, I've collected a handful of things I'm deciding between for opening week. Some perhaps better than others. What you play in an early season may not be the same as trying to find the best deck. In fact, the kinds of decks I'm looking between right now all seek to capitalize on those who are still trying to figure it out. That's right, we are talking about aggro. In the early days and weeks of a new format, people are going to be experimenting with things, tuning them, and testing them out, so we're likely to see less refined builds and overall clunkier decks from opponents. The best way to take advantage of that early on is to simply count to 20 faster than they can. Make them have the answers they may or may not have. So first up is our classic Hyper Aggro Amber Amethyst. Much of this is the same shell as before. I'm just seeing how new cards can breathe new layers into what was already a consistent and streamlined deck, and if a few key additions can help close the gaps on some bad matchups. It's a fairly standard list with a plethora of 1-drops, the bounce package, the bodyguards, library, and some uninteractable lore gain. The first of the new cards is Diablo. This is probably my all-star favorite card of the new set, despite being an unassuming 0-1 common. However, as somebody who loved playing the Cusco 2-drop for as long as he's been legal, I now have 8 of them, which makes me very happy. Diablo, like Cusco, is just kind of an annoying threat for opponents to deal with. It sits there and pings lore gain until your opponent reluctantly has to remove it and give you a bonus card. Having that now in the 1-drop slot too is amazing. Next, I like the idea of the Mad Hatter for this deck. You can either use it to filter the top of your own deck, digging for one of those instant lore gains, or you can target your opponent's deck to keep them off of crucial answers. I don't know if it'll be as good as I think, especially only questing for 1, but I like the ability enough right now to drop the Brooms and Chernobogs for it and Diablo to see how that works out. Lilo Escape Artist seems like she'll be a standout here, just questing away and continuing to return. A likely staple addition to any aggressive Amber deck. The only other new card is the White Rose, which is effectively our 5th through 8 GOAT. Between those 2 cards and the only action cards in the deck, that presents 15 cards that can gain lore instantly, and another 3 if you count Baloo. Daisy, Little Lilo, Maleficent, and Piglet all return as questing threats. Chromacon still draws cards. Library takes advantage of the aggressive questing by giving us a card when our fragile threats are removed. Bosses on a Roll has become a favorite of mine. Gaining the 1 lore is great, but what I really love is filtering those top 5 cards. When you're digging for Goat or Knowledge or Rose, this is going to help you get all the other cards out of the way. All in all, it's a safe, fast, effective way to count to 20. Now this is what speaks to my soul. In my favorite ink combination, we have Amethyst Steel. Similar to decks I've played here on the channel, including the one that won me in Ursula's Return Set Championship, this seems like an awesome place to start. It's similar to the Amber Amethyst with a lot of crossover, but it differs in some very key ways. First, what's the same is the Diablo and Cusco. They are there to annoyingly quest before drawing, Maleficent returns as a 2-lore threat, and the bounce package returns adding Crab into the mix. The White Rose also joins as a new addition, acting as additional goats. The first difference is in the 1-drop slots. We're back to Chernobog and Broom over the Mad Hatter because this deck doesn't necessarily want a raw race every single time. So the option to draw rather than just filter is appreciated. This is less of a straight aggro deck and more of an aggro tempo deck, with some mild control elements with removals and peat. We also have one of my favorite cards in Sticky Mickey. This annoying little threat is a lot more difficult to remove than it should be thanks to resist, and will often quest for 3 or 4 or more before getting taken out. It's also fantastic in aggro mirrors, where it's able to swing into opposing 1/1s and take no damage. 2 other new cards joining us are Calhoun and Yzma. They both serve very different roles. Calhoun does a lot, reminding us of the effect that Robin Hood had, where you gain lore by challenging other characters. But the fact that this only costs 2 and has resist, as well as a pretty respectable 3/2 stat line, is going to make this another staple. Yzma also does a great job of refilling your hand after you've deployed all your 1-drop threats, not to mention questing for 2 herself if she's not drawing you cards. Some favorites return from last season's Amethyst Steel, like Doc and Smee, both of which have been all-stars for me. Smee is one of the best questers in the game on rate, and with the Mims to be able to bounce and reset, he stays amazing. Doc drawing cards can often come in clutch, and between his low cost and the overall low curve of the deck, it's entirely possible that by the time you play him, you'll draw 2 cards and then play them both right away. Pete needs no introduction. He stops problematic actions, can be bounced and replayed, and is a signature Steel staple. The removal suite may be tweaked a bit. I always like good cheap interaction, but I may need more damage-based things for cards like Diablo. With that in mind, the Befuddles may become Babooms, but if they put it into the Cove, then I need Smash anyway. But regardless, none of the removal can be taken by 2-drop Ursula, which is by design. I love these colors and always have fun playing this deck. This is likely my top contender, assuming I can get my hands on the cards by the time we get to play, that first Monday. Now, I've played a lot of Ruby Amethyst across multiple seasons, but never something like this. This is an idea taken from the recent Seattle DLC, building it as a burn deck. I love the idea and want to try it. Same idea of slotting in Diablo and Cusco, can you tell I have a soft spot for these cards, but keeping Broom over Chernobog. Maybe that's wrong? I'm not quite sure, but I feel like I'm going to be questing with it more than popping it for a card, so maybe the extra willpower could be relevant. The bounce package is here, sort of, but there are no bouncers. Crab and Goat are here, joined by newcomers White Rose and the Rabbit replacing Genie. I don't know if Genie is a strict upgrade to Rabbit, but I think the clock of 2 lore and protection of evasive is going to be extremely valuable in racing, as well as attacking into those Diablos. Then we have a bunch of incidental lore gain in cards like Super Goof, Thievery, Gathering Knowledge, Pirate's Life, and the locations. Being able to gain out of nowhere will be invaluable, especially if the opponent is caught off guard. If you spend the first few turns playing a Broom and then a Snake and a Sisu, maybe Brawl something, they can get lulled into this false sense of security. Casually questing up to 10 or 12 can often spell the end of the game before they even know it, especially when you have locations to either gain lore or pull their attention away from accelerating their own game plan in order to deal with these 7 and 8 will-powered lore-gaining distractions. Removal isn't as robust as classic Ruby Amethyst, but still has Elsa, Brawl, and Be Prepared to help slow opponents down or panic button if needed. The goal with this one is to win before any of that matters. Last but not least is another count to 20 deck that is likely the same kind of speed as Amber Amethyst, but adds in layers of annoyance. Much of the Amethyst core is the same, though it's adding some of the 4-drop genies. What makes this different is just exchanging the bodyguards and such for more punishing or evasive questers. Cursed Merfolk is always a rough character to answer, especially in multiples. It'll eat damage-based removal all day, but challenging in means they have to lose a card. The Pegasus shift line helps protect against many challengers, and if you can get a chance to shift it, gaining 2 lore on evasive body that dodges Brawl is pretty nice. Then Bonsai, who also dodges Brawl, will be annoying or difficult for any non-steel deck to get rid of. Ultimately, you want to flood the board, quest as much as you can, and hope to filter with Chromicon, Mad Hatter, or bosses on a roll to then slam multiple cards that gain lore on the spot. It can be brutal, especially when going first, but as with all of these decks, some finesse and care is needed to be paid to timing and pacing when on the draw. In case you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of Amethyst. All 4 of these decks feature it, and while they may or may not be the overall best strategies, if your goal is to win fast, decisively, and consistently, especially in the first few weeks of a new set when people are still figuring things out, these are the kinds of things you want to play. And for me, I'm probably picking up that Amethyst Steel, as it's my favorite colors, and it's been my favorite colors since I started this game. Alright, Illumineers, what are you playing? Let me know down below. Stay questing, stay winning, and I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed that, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want more gameplay or breakdown videos, check out the playlist and recommendations here.